Centre Parks with my family, and I thought I would do a quick little reading update. It is absolutely lovely here, and the one book I've brought with me is Under the Idala Trees by Chinelo Okparanta. This is a queer historical fiction. It's more of a literary fiction, very like character focused, set in 1968 in the Nigerian Civil War, and it is about a young girl. She's sort of in her mid-teens. She gets sent away by her mum to live with a grammar school teacher and his wife, and she meets another girl and they have some form of sapphic relationship, but obviously this is Nigeria in the late 60s. She cannot be having any form of sapphic relationship in society. It is so frowned upon. I'm not very far into it. I am on page 83 and I've been like underlining so much because the topics that it's discussing, there's a lot of Bible references in this at the minute. It's very much talking about the conversation of queerness and religion and how the two don't really mix, obviously, within this historical context. There has been a bit of a time jump, so I'm kind of waiting for a flashback to go back and give the details of what this relationship actually entails. It's just more been hinted at the minute. But overall, it is really beautifully written and I'm really looking forward to getting more into it. I thought I would do an update and talk about some of the books that I have really enjoyed recently, and they are all lit fics. I think one of them is a modern classic, but literary fiction and modern classics are very, very much entwined, so let's talk about them. Starting off with Disappoint Me, this is by Nicola Deenan and it is her second novel. It would be a really good book if you are someone who reads romance and wants to try reading some literary fiction. This would be a really good book to pick up. It is queer as well because one of the main characters, it is a dual narration. One of the main characters, Max, she is a trans woman. And the narrative shifts from Max's perspective to her boyfriend, Vincent. Ignore the cat here. My cat wants some attention. I absolutely adore Nicola Deenan's writing. I've been putting this one off because I knew I would love it. And sometimes it almost feels intimidating when you read a book by an author. So for example, the other year I read Bellies and I loved Bellies. Bellies was one of the books that I read that got me back into literary fiction. I think this was 2 years ago. So I had been putting off reading this because I was like, what if I don't like Disappoint Me as much? But they're still very different stories, although they explore very similar themes. And Nicola Deenan's writing is just honestly spectacular. If you like introspective, verging on melancholic literary fiction, I would really, really recommend you pick this book up. We also have Under the Idala Trees by Chinelo Okparanta. This is, again, a queer, I think in this case, sapphic literary fiction. It's historical fiction because it's set in the late 60s, predominantly in Nigeria. So the Nigerian Civil War is at the start of the book and then it kind of progresses through time as the story goes on. And it follows Ijeoma, I think is how you pronounce her name, and she ends up in like a sapphic relationship with another young girl in her teens. Her family find out and it's kind of her story from there. This is absolutely brilliant as well. Again, the writing is incredible. And one thing I really love about reading diverse fiction and diverse literary fiction, like character focused fiction as well, is learning about a different culture, a different place, a different viewpoint, and opening myself up to new information. Like, I was Googling about the Nigerian Civil War and the different tribes and what does it mean. And I love books that teach me something, especially through fiction. And if you are looking to diversify your reading and you like sapphic literature and you like literary fiction, I would recommend this. The only thing I will say is there is a lot of homophobia in this book. Obviously, it is set in Nigeria, so there is a lot of homophobia, but it's worth it. If you can handle that, it is worth it. I also finally finished Wilhelm's Room by Tove Ditlevsen. This is one I picked up in January, and being real, I read most of it in January, February, and then I put the book down and I picked it up again in June and I finished it off. I found this one really difficult to read. Don't get me wrong, this is an absolutely brilliant, beautifully written book. And the way that the author plays with narrative, especially considering this is a translation from Danish, I just have so much respect for like such well-written translations. I will say I did DNF it. This is not an easy book to read because of the narrative style, because of the way that it jumps between times and perspectives without necessarily telling you that it's doing so. But if you are looking for a challenge, I would recommend this. I would put in trigger warnings for mental health. I would say check the trigger warnings if mental health is something that you struggle with. Like, even though I didn't necessarily love this book, I still really, really appreciate what it does and what the author is trying to do. And I think if I need a challenge, I would happily pick up another one of her work. And look how beautiful this cover is. Like, that cover is insane. It's so pretty. The last book I want to talk about is Milk Teeth by Jessica Andrews. Now, I read this on my Kindle. I have since gone through and tabbed a physical copy that I got on Vinted. I adored this book, okay? I just loved the intense melancholia of the narrator. She doesn't know who she is, essentially, and she's trying to figure that out in the backdrop of a very passionate new relationship. It is hetero. I don't normally read that much hetero, but this was absolutely brilliant. And I have ordered Jessica Andrews' other book, her debut, which is hopefully being delivered from, I ordered it on Vinted, and that should come tomorrow. And I do intend on picking it up quite quickly. The writing is so good. It follows, you know her name? I don't think we know her name, actually. But it's all about desire and hunger. I will say trigger warnings for eating disorders within this. It's more historic than present, but still is mentioned. And it's all about like her realization, like how can she be comfortable in her body? How can she be comfortable in herself? And it's split location-wise between rainy, foggy London and I think it was Barcelona in Spain. So there's two very different vibes. It would be an excellent summer read. I read this in a day, sat on a sun lounger in my garden. I honestly cannot praise this book enough, but it is very much no plot, just vibes. If you are someone who needs a plot in your books to drive them forward, I probably wouldn't recommend this to you. But if you are someone who wants very introspective, character-focused literary fiction about a young woman who's trying to find herself, I would really, really, really recommend this book. I loved it. So warm today. It is actually silly how warm it is right now, and it's only going to get hotter, which I find quite terrifying. I can also feel like a cold coming on. I thought it was just hay fever, but I actually think I am now coming down with a cold, so that will be my third cold within the space of 3 months. Delightful. When I worked from home, I didn't get ill at all, but here we are. This is now my reality, my new reality. But anyway, I'm yapping. I have got a talk this evening. It's just an online Zoom talk, and I actually found it through an Instagram ad for something called Seed Talks. I've been getting ads from them for ages, and they do actually look really interesting. It looks like they do some in-person ones and some online ones, and this one cost me £15, which I thought was quite good. And I've been trying to find ways to like use my brain in the way that my brain actually likes being used, which is not in daily life. My brain likes literature and it likes to analyse literature. And I miss uni. I miss having almost like a professor or a tutor or someone kind of teaching me how to do that. But the talk that I'm doing this evening, an online Zoom one, is all about Sylvia Plath and the presence of like witches and witchcraft within her poetry. Now, I am very familiar with Sylvia Plath's writing because I studied the bell jar at school in my A2, so my A2 is my A levels, and then I also talked about it in my undergraduate dissertation. I talked about the sort of portrayal of mental health and institutionalization and recovery in mid-20th century American fiction. So I talked about the bell jar. I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, which I think is by Joanne Greenberg, but I might have got that wrong, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Casey. I can't remember if I've got those authors' names right. I haven't picked up the bell jar or any Plath in the 10 years since I handed that dissertation in. I know, can you believe it? It's been 10 years. Showing my age there. But yeah, so despite the fact that I really enjoyed the bell jar, I never really got into her poetry. I've owned this copy of Ariel for like 10 years, and as you can see, it's pretty much pristine because I've never really been able to get into it, which is sad. So I'm hoping this talk that is by like an actual professor with a PhD, I'm hoping I'll learn something, and I'm hoping that I can kind of exercise my brain again in that way that it really enjoys. One thing that I'm really aware of though with writers like Sylvia Plath is how romanticized they are, and I think you could probably say the same for Virginia Woolf, because she also ended her life in a different but similar way, and that's how romanticized their melancholy was. But I don't, whereas obviously we should appreciate their art and their literature and what they have put out in the world, and we can find them fascinating. For example, I find Plath and Woolf fascinating as people, and I really enjoy learning all about them. Here's my copy of Sylvia Plath's journals from my uni days. No, I have not read it all, but I will not get rid of this. I remember the ones reading thinking like, this woman is so interesting, especially as a young woman. But like, should we be romanticizing them in the way that we do, especially when you consider like how their lives ended? Should we really be romanticizing, and I'm repeating myself with that word, but should we be romanticizing that level of melancholy? And I appreciate that intense melancholy and suffering and mental anguish, you could say, are great for art. Like, the suffering artist is like an archetype for a reason. It's a cliche for a reason. But should we be romanticizing them to the level that we do? I don't know. It kind of gives me the ick a little bit. But that being said, I am looking forward to this talk. I am really trying to be more intellectual and to live more intellectually. I don't even know if that's a word. And I think that doing a talk like this could be a very approachable way for me to do that. But I will update you when the talk is done, because you never know, it might not be any good. But hopefully, fingers crossed. I have realised that I never did an update about the Sylvia Plath lecture that I watched online, even though I watched it over a week ago now. I think overall the course of this video has taken me like a month to film. So the first bit of footage you saw when I was at Centre Parks, that was actually a month ago, literally to the day. So this video has taken me quite a long time to film and edit, but we are nearly there. Going back to the Sylvia Plath lecture, it was actually really quite good. It's been such a long time since I have done anything academic, and I always loved academia. If I could go from degree to degree to degree and just spend my whole life learning and immersing myself in knowledge, I absolutely would. Unfortunately, I also quite like owning a house and having a regular paycheck, etc. There are also other things I want to do with my life. So unfortunately, doing degree after degree after degree is just not possible, as much as I would love that. Not in this lifetime anyway. I'd say like doing a PhD and becoming a professor is like one of the figs on my tree, to use Sylvia Plath's like analogy. It's one of the figs, but I think I'm just going to let that fig rot because it's not going to happen, which is sad, but we move on. I was pleasantly surprised to see that the poems that this lady talked about were actually in my copy of Ariel. I wasn't expecting to actually own a copy because obviously this is not the biggest book of poems, so she could have picked any out of Plath's like collection of poems, but it is lucky that I did have the one. The main one we focused on was, if I can find it, it was Lady Lazarus. And it was just really nice to just analyse poetry. Well, really have someone else to analyse the poetry and me go, oh my God, yeah. So I really enjoyed that. It was like split into two halves, and the first half was more of like the history of witchcraft in America, the Salem witch trials, and how the history and the culture surrounding that would have influenced Plath and how she would have been aware of these different things. And then how the second half was more about how they impacted her poetry and how they impacted her writing. I did end up missing most of the second half because my sister called, but the next day I got an email through with the recording attached to it, and that was really helpful because it meant that I could skip through the parts that were less interesting and really like pause and focus on the parts that I found the most interesting. And I think I would definitely do another one of those talks because for £15 I don't think that is bad. I think that's quite good. And if you can't make the time of it, then obviously if you get the recording through, you can just watch the recording at a time that suits you. I will definitely do another one. I don't know when or what it will be about, but I will do another one of those talks when I feel like my brain just needs a bit of stimulation. Hades! What? What? What are you meowing at? Come here. This is Hades. What are you meowing at? He does not want to be picked up right now. I think that will be it for this video, and hopefully the next ones won't take me quite so long to film and edit. But if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one.